Let me welcome you all. I'm pleased to see you here. We have 19 participants on the screen, and I am Michael Eager, and I'm local secretary of San Francisco Regional Mensa, and I will be your host today. Let me introduce today's speaker, Jacquie Gentry. Jacquie is a life member of American Mensa, a former AMC member. She earned a bachelor's degree and master's in English, went on to receive a JD degree, and became a lawyer and a law professor. She now devotes her time to writing mystery novels featuring inspectors who just seem to be a little bit autobiographical. And they're set in San Francisco Bay, where she lives now, in the Bay Area where she lives now. So here is Jacquie Gentry.
Oh, thank you. It's been a long time since I've had the joy and privilege of speaking with fellow Mensa members, and I really appreciate this opportunity, and hope you'll find it worthwhile. I have to start though with something that may be a little counterintuitive. First of all, my guess is probably we've all been reading a lot more books in the last few months than we normally read. And we normally read a lot of books. And it just so happens that a couple of weeks ago, I read a book recommended by my son. And I ran across a short paragraph that hit me in the face, and I thought, that's gotta be the beginning of my talk when I talk to the Mensa group. So here is the quote. Dante's ninth circle of hell, the inferno's deepest pit, is reserved for the wickedest sinners, traitors to their benefactors who in their fiercest, filthiest dungeons of Hades suffer the eternal degradation of the ingrate. Were there a 10th circle, it would be reserved for the only creature yet more debased and unforgivable, an author promoting his book. So here I am in the 10th circle of hell promoting my book. And I hope that you will take it though in the spirit that I intended, which is that more than just promoting the book in the sense of, gee, I would love to have you buy my book and it become a bestseller and all that. I hope people will read my books, and I hope they will enjoy them. And so that's my intent as I describe my 3 mystery novels to you. They are entitled, beginning with the words first, second, and third. They make up what now, so far, is the Quillen trilogy, because the central character is Clara Quillen. And when I first came up with the idea of starting the titles with first, second, and third, and so on, of course, it was a copycat of Sue Grafton. I imagine a lot of you, I can see the head shaking. Of course, you know Sue Grafton, who wrote the alphabet mysteries. A is for alibi, B is for burglar, C is for corpse, and so on. And thank you. It's been a long time since I've had the joy and privilege of speaking with fellow Mensa members, and I really appreciate this opportunity, and hope you'll find it worthwhile. I have to start though with something that may be a little counterintuitive. First of all, my guess is probably we've all been reading a lot more books in the last few months than we normally read. And we normally read a lot of books. And it just so happens that a couple of weeks ago, I read a book recommended by my son. And I ran across a short paragraph that hit me in the face, and I thought, that's gotta be the beginning of my talk when I talk to the Mensa group. So here is the quote. Dante's ninth circle of hell, the inferno's deepest pit, is reserved for the wickedest sinners, traitors to their benefactors who in their fiercest, filthiest dungeons of Hades suffer the eternal degradation of the ingrate. Were there a 10th circle, it would be reserved for the only creature yet more debased and unforgivable, an author promoting his book. So here I am in the 10th circle of hell promoting my book. And I hope that you will take it, though, in the spirit that I intended, which is that more than just promoting the book in the sense of, gee, I would love to have you buy my book and it become a bestseller and all that. I hope people will read my books and I hope they will enjoy them. And so that's my intent as I describe my 3 mystery novels to you. They are entitled, beginning with the words first, second, and third. They make up what now, so far, is the Quillen trilogy, because the central character is Clara Quillen. And when I first came up with the idea of starting the titles with first, second, and third, and so on, of course, it was a copycat of Sue Grafton. I imagine a lot of you, I can see the head shaking. Of course, you know Sue Grafton, who wrote the alphabet mysteries. A is for alibi, B is for burglar, C is for corpse, and so on. And
hi, Jackie. Jackie, can I interrupt you just for a second?
Sure.
Can you turn your microphone up a little bit? There are people in the chat that are mentioning that
okay.
Your volume is pretty low.
Let me see if I can do that. Do you know how to turn up the volume?
Perhaps just
Give me an idea how?
Sit a little bit closer. On a Windows machine, it's usually above F3.
Let me just try sitting closer. Does this help any? Does this help?
Yes, it does.
If that, it sounds like it's better now. So let me know if there's anything else I can do. As I was going to say, Sue Grafton, of course, only got to the Y in the alphabet. Oh, good. My clever husband here has found the way to move it up a little bit.
Use the cursor to push it over.
Okay. Except it's not moving.
Okay.
Okay. Now that should be better, is it? Okay, good. All right, anyway, I was so looking forward to Sue Grafton getting to the end of the alphabet because I wanted her to wind everything up. And sadly, she died after she wrote Y. And my friends who knew I had used this in my plan said, you don't even have to worry about when you quit, you know. If you've got first, second, third, there is no end. I can go on forever and ever. And I have a feeling some point it's going to find an end, but for now it's just 3. The first one is entitled First Thing, Kill the Lawyers. And usually people react a little bit to that until they find out I'm a lawyer and I really don't want to kill lawyers. But I do have to sort of explain why it is I came up with it. And that has to do with the fact that at the time I wrote the book, I was working for someone that was such a horrible boss that I really wanted to kill him. Except, of course, I can tell by the smiles, 1 or 2 of you have had known some boss that you might have wanted to kill. In my case, of course, I did not want to suffer the end result of what might happen if you go around killing people. And it just seemed like a much better idea to kill him off in fiction. And I started out, I thought, you know, I was sort of mad and I started out with the idea that I was simply going to write a little story and kill him off, and and that was my catharsis, just to get him out of my system. And what surprised me was that what I thought was going to be a little maybe short story, it suddenly took on whole new dimensions. The new characters kept popping up, people. And what I realized, of course, is that a lot of these characters were coming from people that I knew, and I wanted to depict them. And of course, once you have people, you have to have people doing things. And then suddenly it started forming a plot. And so eventually it became an actual mystery novel. So the whole idea then was just to try to depict this story that at the time was, kind of a fun thing for me to write. And I also started to think about what it was that I liked or didn't like about mystery novels. Having read them for a very long time, I realized that one of the things that always annoyed me a little bit about mystery novels is if you don't get to the mystery until you're halfway through the novel. And in the case of a murder mystery, I don't want to wait halfway through. Or I've actually read, I finished a mystery novel not long ago where it was in the last chapter that you actually found out the guy had been murdered. Until then, you weren't sure. Was it suicide? Was it this or that? And, so I determined that I was going to start with the murder. And so that led to my device, and I've used it on all three books, and that is my prologue. My prologue is a very short description of what is in the mind of the killer. And it gives me another advantage. I have written the story from the an omniscient point of view, describing what takes place. But I realized that if I describe the murderer and I say he or she, that at least eliminates half of the possibilities. But if in my prologue I speak as the murderer, I can use the word I. So when I say I did this or I did that, you don't know whether the killer is a man or a woman. So in each case, it starts right after the murder has been committed. And I'll just read you the first couple of paragraphs. The first murder takes place, actually there are 3 of them. I decided that it wasn't enough to just kill off one lawyer. If I was gonna be true to the kill all the lawyers, I had to kill more than one, so I killed 3 of them. They're all 3 killed in Marin County, and the murderer is driving back to San Francisco across the Golden Gate Bridge. And this is what is in the mind of the murderer. I can't believe I did it. I really did it. At last, I killed all 3 of them, and it came off like clockwork, the perfect crime. I feel a little queasy. I'll roll down the window and get some fresh air. Thought I might feel sick, but I don't really feel sick, just a little queasy. I never thought there'd be so much blood. Funny though, I don't feel the least bit guilty. They deserved it. But I thought I'd feel a little guilty anyway. So what's guilt? Big philosophical question. I hate to admit it, I feel a little exhilarated. Well, maybe that's just the adrenaline pumping. I didn't think I'd feel this way. I actually felt sort of satisfied. And so it goes on a little bit, but I don't know what a murderer would actually have been thinking. I'll be very frank with you, I've never actually committed a murder. But it's interesting to try to imagine, and my guess is whatever is in the mind of a killer will vary from killer to killer. And so this then now leads into the story where we meet our protagonist, who is Clara Quillen. And Clara starts her day every day, strangely enough, exactly the way I start my day, with a cup of coffee and the San Francisco Chronicle. And when she's reading her chronicle, she reads a story that starts out, 3 Bay Area lawyers each died from a gunshot wound to the head in Marin County last night. Alvin Hanks, from a divorce lawyer with 2 Bay Area offices, was found dead in his Mercedes parked at the Lark Creek Inn restaurant in Larkspur. Richard Renko, San Rafael attorney specializing in legal malpractice, was found dead in his Porsche in the parking lot of the Marin Cultural Center, Civic Center. And Bernard Kahn, K-A-H-N, a San Francisco attorney, was found dead on the roadside near his Mill Valley home. And of course, that's the connection with Clara, because she worked for Bernard Kahn. And she has fairly recently left his employ. The story in the Chronicle goes on to say that they were all 3 shot roughly in the same way, shot in the head. And there was one rather peculiar thing. Crumpled up in the hand of each one was a piece of paper on which was written the words, "First thing, kill the lawyers." And of course, actually, it was the longer quote than that. It was the full quote from the Shakespearean play that says, "The first thing we do, let's kill all the lawyers." And I condensed it just a little for the title. So that, of course, gives you the tie with the title. And that's another little quirk I have. It's always annoyed me a little bit when I read a novel and I don't understand the title, and I keep wondering why the title, and somewhere in the middle, or maybe in the very last chapter, they will tell me what the title means. But I always put it pretty near the first. So we know why it's First Thing, Kill All the Lawyers. So we now know that Clara worked in this law firm, and that she knew Bernard Kahn, and obviously she wonders, who killed her boss, her former boss. And this gets her to start thinking about the law office, the people she knew, and so forth. And of course, the first thing that comes to everybody's mind is that the law firm she worked for is like a dysfunctional family. And it's filled with kind of quirky characters. And of course, these characters become suspects. The first suspect, of course, is Kahn's wife, because you always suspect the spouse, right? Whether it's husband or wife, they're always a suspect. Then you could say the next thing you would suspect may be his friends. But of course, Bernard Kahn did not have any friends, so that lets that out. But there are certainly acquaintances, and there are clients, and there are co-workers, and it begins to develop that all of these suspects have dark secrets. What draws Clara into this, though, is Detective Travis. In the course of the investigation, the 3 different murder victims have prime detectives assigned to them, and the other 2 are in other jurisdictions, but it happens that Kahn had his office in San Francisco, so Detective Travis is assigned. And Detective Travis is exactly the kind of police detective you would want to have. If your very best friend was murdered, you would want Detective Travis to be the one investigating that crime, because he is competent, he is thorough, he is caring, he is just think of every good quality you can think of, and that's Detective Travis. So in the course of his investigation, naturally, he talks to everybody connected with the law firm, and this includes even the recent dismissed people, and of course, Clara falls into that category. So when he talks to Clara, he has in the back of his mind, he knows, of course, that it's quite possible that one of the clients might possibly be a murder perpetrator. But he can't really get to the clients because of attorney-client privilege. He can't get into the files. I mean, even a policeman cannot break attorney-client privilege. So he enlists Clara's aid, but it has to be in a very specific way. Obviously, Clara is not going to betray attorney-client privilege anyway. She's a very ethical attorney, of course. And yet, at the same time, she does find it fascinating that she has kind of the opportunity. She's been a mystery fan since she was a kid, and the idea of actually getting to be involved in a murder investigation she thinks is kind of exciting. So she agrees to let Travis know any information which is not privileged information. You know, personal information in the sense of, you know, personal qualities about people and so on. So there are a lot of ways she can provide information for him and still be true to her ethical concerns. She also, of course, has her own backstory. And of course, Clara, you will not be surprised, is a little bit like your author. But one of the great advantages of writing a book is that you can make your characters any way you want. So of course I made her everything I want to be. She's younger, she's better looking, she's nicer, and above all, she is wealthy. None of these really apply to me. So, you know, I took all of the best qualities. And then I added the characteristic of the romance that she gets involved with, because of course, I don't think any good mystery story is complete without a romance. The story ends, and of course, I would never divulge for you the person who committed the crime, but at the very end, it says that, strangely enough, having solved the murder, she is sitting down with a cup of coffee and the San Francisco Chronicle. And she reads this: she was intrigued about the small story about the suspicious death of a young woman who had graduated second in her class just before Clara had graduated from the same law school. And the victim was found with her body tossed on the rocks near Fort Point. And this, of course, leads into the second novel, Second in Her Class, because the victim was second in her class. So, Second in Her Class, again, starts with a prologue. And again, it is in the mind of the murderer, who starts off by saying, I can't leave her here. Somebody might figure out what happened and how it happened, and then trace it back to me somehow. But what can I do with her? How can I get her out of here anyway? She's not very big, but I still have to move her. So I have to drive somewhere so I can take her away from here. I have to clean up. Not too much to clean up. There's not too much blood, just a few fingerprints and a little blood. I'll take her phone with me. I'll have to get rid of that. I don't know if it's incriminating, but it might be. How can a small woman be so heavy? dead weight. I had only a block to carry her, and I wasn't sure I'd make it. With the light from the moon, somebody might have seen me. Almost gave up and left it. But I have to find a place to put her. And so he puts her. Eventually, after driving around, he remembers having been at Fort Point at one point, and he remembers the movie Vertigo. So you remember when Kim Novak jumped into the bay and Jimmy Stewart has to jump in after her and pull her out? Well, that's really how I started that second novel. It started because I knew that's where I wanted my body to be found. And also I wanted to tie it to Hitchcock mysteries. And so I tied it to Vertigo. But my motivation for writing the second book was very different from the first. To be honest, by the time I got around to the second book, I wasn't even mad at my boss anymore. That was history. But I had a different motivation, and it's partly because of the motivation I have for reading books in the first place. One is to escape. I like to be put in a different place, a different world than the one I'm in. And especially now, now that we're all kind of in this very confined space, I want to get to a new space. The last mystery I read was set in the Australian outback. And frankly, I would never want to live in the Australian outback. But it was really interesting to be there for a while and to be in a completely different environment. But I have two other purposes in writing. And one is to give you the experience of what it is like to be in a particular situation. And the other purpose is, I hope to inform you. So my second novel is set in a law school because I spent 15 years teaching in law school. And so it's to give you a little of the sense of what it's like to be a law professor and to be in that environment. But also it is more specific to what I taught. I taught legal writing and research, but I also taught juvenile law. And at the same time, I worked on behalf of abused and neglected children on appointment by the California Court of Appeal. And I wanted to have my reader have a little bit more of an understanding of the law that applies to abused and neglected children. So in this particular one, my characters, of course, are students in the law school, fellow faculty members, but also some people related to juvenile dependency law, which is the area of law where I practiced. And so in the course of this one, she goes into a considerable amount about the character of the various professors and students and so on. And eventually you find out why the lovely woman who was a law professor and who was murdered, and who her murderer turns out to be. And in the course of it, of course, we can never neglect romance. And so I make some changes in Clara's romance, and this time introduce her to a new person and someone who becomes very important in her life. And so at the end of the novel, of course, we find out who committed the murder. And strangely enough, and I hate to sound so formulaic, but it just fits so well, is that she's sitting with her cup of coffee in her San Francisco Chronicle, and she is reading another story about a new murder. This time, the comment was specific to a very unusual murder, and it led into a very different kind of murder. As she perused the San Francisco Chronicle, she read about an apparent homicide that happened in a local art house movie theater. The article started out with, "The strains of the Third Man theme could still be heard as a bloodied man staggered out the Roxy Theater in the Mission District and collapsed. He was pronounced dead from 3 gunshot wounds in the chest shortly afterward at a nearby hospital." This time she was almost expecting Travis's call. She wasn't surprised when he said, "Hi, Clara, want to go to a movie?" Can you hear the Third Man theme? Remember it? Of course you do. Okay. All right. So that's enough, I think.
I'm trying to
All right. Now, each book stands alone, and they don't have to be read in sequence, although frankly, whenever I read, just turn it off. Whenever I read a series, I frankly like to start with the first one and keep going. One of my favorite series, by the way, is Donna Leon's series that's wonderful mysteries, all set in Venice. And in the very first one, it's Death at La Fenice, and that's the great opera house in Venice. And then each one has a different setting in Venice and goes on that way. Well, in this one, I again try to take advantage of having been a movie buff. Now, in the second one, I tied things to Vertigo, to Alfred Hitchcock movies. I make, some of the clues have to do with that and so forth. In this one, though, it's a completely different situation. All of the murders take place in historic movie houses in the Bay Area. The first one is in the Roxy Theater. That's where the Third Man theme was playing. And that's where the first murder takes place. The Roxy all of these are real theaters. The Roxy is in the Mission District. The second murder takes place in the Castro Theater in the Castro. The third one, we move down to the Stanford Theater, and so on. So this gives me the advantage to infuse the story with my love of old movies, and I have different movies and different ones. Although I eventually build up, and just by sheer coincidence, one of the later movies takes place during the showing of RBG, and it's sad to think that there is that link, but it is there. But as you have certainly guessed by now, the fact that there are many murders in a series, this is a serial killer. And the main difference in this story and the first two is that we know almost immediately who the killer is. And so this is not a whodunit. We know exactly who committed the crimes. The question in this book, however, is not so much whodunit as how is he going to be caught. And so it has to go through the series of the movie theaters and the various settings in San Francisco. And of course, I developed the romance a little bit more, and that reaches a climax as well. How is my time? I think I've probably spoken a little bit more than half an hour, and I had sort of tentatively planned to speak half an hour and then give you any time for questions you might have. And obviously I can keep talking about my books, but there isn't a lot more I can say anyway without giving away the ending. So I'm hoping that you have some questions and I'd love to answer them.
Thank you very much, Jackie. We do have some questions in the chat, and if anybody else has additional questions, please put them in there. The first one from Roberta is, what are your personal favorite mystery series?
Well, I just mentioned one of them, which is the Donna Leon. I love hers. One of the things I love about the Donna Leon series is that Inspector Brunetti is, I think that's the right name. I'm not that good on Italian names, but I think it's Brunetti. Anyway, he is a very decent person with a fairly normal family. He has a nice wife and 2 teenage children who are as normal as teenage children can be. And he's not an alcoholic. He doesn't use hard drugs. He doesn't have, some deep, dark, horrible thing that ruined his psyche or anything like that. He's just a really good detective. And it's one of the things I like about it. And and of course I love the setting because I love Venice. And of course Michael Connelly has several series that I enjoy. The Harry Bosch series are all just first rate, and the Lincoln Lawyer series. One of my favorites in the Lincoln Lawyer is The Fifth Witness. That's one I would recommend to you. But there's no end to mysteries that you can love.
Real good. Next question from Judy is, did you think of the first, second, and third names of the books before you started the second book?
No, I didn't. The first one, I liked the idea of the first thing kill the lawyers, and because I wanted to tie in the Shakespeare quote. And I knew that it was going to be the first in the series. And then I had to think of something for the second and third and so on. So when I was trying to think of the second one, I thought about my victim and I tried to think of something that would fit in. So I made her graduate second in her class, and Clara went to the same law school, and of course that's why Travis cares about her, because she can, kind of talk to people at the law school and that sort of thing. So that was the second. And then I knew I had to go to the third, and I knew I had to tie it in with movies. And so the natural was Third Man theme, and that's an Orson Welles movie, and Third Man is one of my favorite movies. So that was a natural, and of course the music kept running through my head all during it. So that's how the 3 names came.
Do you have a name for your fourth?
If there is a fourth one, I ended this one with a reference to the Fourth Amendment. But to be honest, I don't know if there's going to be a fourth one yet. So we'll see.
I can see something taken from annual gathering games rooms, people wandering around looking for a fourth for bridge.
Oh, that's not a bad idea. Trouble is I don't play bridge, so that would be hard. But wait, you just gave me an idea. Somebody who doesn't know how to play bridge, but somebody's looking for a fourth, that's a good possibility.
Happy to help. How do you determine the names for your characters? Eric wants to know. Are they similar to real people's names?
Often they are, but not entirely. Bernard Kahn, I gave the name Kahn, K-A-H-N, because later I wanted to refer to him as a con man. And, so that was easy. I occasionally give people that I am not fond of the names. None of the names are exactly like people I know, but I give them similar names to people I know. There is someone who has a name of a famous general, and I gave him the name MacArthur, which was not the name of his original name, but there is a little connection there. Some of the names, for example, at the law firm, the names are very similar to people I worked with. If they're people I wanted to honor, but with a little twist, and I occasionally use names of friends, but with a little bit of a change, just because I think they'll find it fun. I even refer to two twin children at one point who are named Joe and Zoe. That's the name of my grandchildren. So that's it.
Susan wants to know, with each novel, have you pre-planned what the next one will be?
That leads you to the plotters versus pantsers question. I went to a workshop one time with mystery writers, and that's where I learned the difference between plotters and pantsers. Plotters are the writers who plot out their story very carefully. Some of them plot it so carefully that they have outlined the entire novel before they ever write the first word. Pantsers are the people who write by the seat of their pants. And so they just, they wing it and they just keep going. And of course, while I was sitting there listening to these people describe how they worked, I thought, well, what am I? And I realized I'm a combination. I have an idea about where I'm going. I know roughly what my characters are. I have a general shape for my story, but I don't fill in the blanks until I'm actually writing. So I have it sort of worked out, but I'm still a little bit working by the seat of my pants. So I'm a hybrid.
And I believe Kathy's question follows right after that. What is your process of writing? Like start writing at 7 a.m. daily, write for 3 hours, some other way?
It has frankly been quite erratic. The first one, I started writing after I left the law firm where I was very unhappy. And, I wrote the basic story, put it aside literally for a very long time, and didn't even think about it for a while. I then started working at the law school, a lot of things happened. And then I just decided one day, I think I'll go back and take a look at that. And I started working on it again. And then I started working on it very regularly. But I was working full time at the time. So I had to fit it in with my work. By the time I wrote the second one, I had retired from full-time work. And that's when we moved from Southern California to the Bay Area. And then I knew I wanted to write another one. And I went through my usual daily routine, which, as you've already figured out, is the cup of coffee, and the Chronicle, and the shower. And then I sat down and I started to write, through the day, and just kept writing until I was mostly finished. And that's pretty much the way I've worked ever since then. In fact, I'm not at all like those dedicated writers, who get up at the crack of dawn and write and drudge. It's just not, I don't have to do it that seriously. thank goodness.
Ed wants to know what motivates you to devote such time and energy to writing a book.
Well, at the beginning, the motivation was just, as I said, sort of a catharsis. But after I realized I could do it, I know that I have wanted to write my entire life. I mean, when I was a little kid, I wanted to write. And I never really thought I had it in me. And so once I realized I could actually write a book and I could actually find somebody who would publish the book, it's obviously not a big publisher or anybody, that is going to make me a bestseller or anything like that. But just knowing that I was capable of writing a book made me want to keep going. And I love putting words together. I like, some people don't actually, I've never understood how anybody can be a writer and say they don't like to write. I truly love it. I love putting the words together, and I like playing with the words and moving them around, trying to get a sentence just the way I want it, and so on.
Yeah, Betty wants to know if they were all by the same publisher. And I looked on Amazon and I did not see a listing. Are they available?
Yeah, okay. The first book was published by a publisher that published the book. This was great. And then they took the second book too. I had the contract for the second book, and then the book and the company folded. So then I had to go find another one. So my publisher now is Black Opal Books. It's a small publisher. So Black Opal, the books are available from Amazon, Black Opal, and Barnes and Noble. But I had it so it was supposed to paste. It was supposed to paste in this. Let's see. There we go. And I refer to it as my Quillen trilogy, because right now it is a trilogy. And so now they are all three published by Black Opal Books, but available also from Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
Next question is about your process from Maureen.
There it is.
Do you free write, then edit in small pieces, or do you write the whole thing and edit?
I edit as I go along. As I'm writing, I try to get each sentence right, and I have thought about writing a draft and then going back and editing, and I find that impossible. I can't leave something alone if I don't think it's right. But then once I go through it, I go back over it again. I can't even tell you how many times I go through and edit and keep playing with the words and so forth.
I had a question. You mentioned that the introductions all start in first person. The murderer speaking. Is the rest of the book in first person or third person?
No, it's in third person. I toyed with the idea of doing what Sue Grafton did, writing from the point of view of the, in her case, the detective, the private eye. But I decided that was too limiting because occasionally I want to be looking at it from somebody else's point of view. So it's omniscient point of view.
Do we have any other questions?
Oh, the things are in chat now, not the titles of the book though, that didn't come through.
Yeah, I did the...
But that's okay. But that's in other places anyway. But as I said, it's not so much that I care to sell the books is that I hope somebody will want to read them. I hope that people will find them entertaining the way I hope they'll enjoy them the way I enjoy mysteries.
Very good. We will add the titles of the books and links to them on Amazon or Black Opal in the chat when we publish this on YouTube.
Thank you.
So, Maureen says they are, she has read them all and they are a fun romp through San Francisco.
I gotta be honest though, Maureen's a friend. She's been a friend for a long time. So friends say nice things about their friends. I'm lucky to have a friend like Maureen.
I have to say that I enjoy reading books where they talk about the places that I end up driving by, whether it's someplace, a story about San Francisco and talking about Nob Hill, or you know, turning on Infinity Drive at the Apple campus.
I am so glad to hear you say that, because we love San Francisco, and until the pandemic, we went into the city at least every week or two, and all three books are filled with locations, and so there are lots of locations that will be very familiar to you. And I was very pleased that my sister, who lives in Texas, poor thing, said that she actually enjoys the San Francisco setting too, because she doesn't have the chance to see it. So I hope people will enjoy that.
Are there other questions? If not, then I want to thank Jacquie Gentry for giving us a very interesting talk. We have a lot of hands clapping in the gallery view. We will be publishing this, as I said, on our YouTube channel. You can find that at sfmensa.org/YouTube. And Betty has one last question here. She's in the process of writing a mystery based in the South Bay. Is there anything that you would advise her not to do?
Oh gosh. There's so many things about writing mysteries that for me, the most important thing is to be true to your reader and just be fair. Give the information. Don't come out of left field in the last chapter with somebody they've never heard of and say, oh, this is the person who did it, you know, or something like that. You know, just, but I have a feeling that advice isn't really needed, you know, because that's sort of a fundamental idea. But every once in a while, I will read a mystery where some mystery writer has just annoyed me so much for not playing fair as a mystery writer. And so I guess that would be it. But I don't know if the question actually might have to do with the South Bay. I think it would be great. I'd love to read a mystery set in the South Bay, you know, with a different kind of setting. But I'd read that one. Let me know when it's out.
Wonderful. We do list all of our events on Meetup under SF Mensa for the members, and for non-members, they're always welcome. We have San Francisco Mensa Friends. And if anybody would like to be a host for one of our monthly gatherings or speaker meetings, please send an email to speakers@sfmensa.org. We would be happy to have you do this. So another round of applause for Jacquie, and we will sign off.
Thank you, Jacquie.
Thank you very much. Thanks for all of you. So glad you came.